It's so nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
How did you get started as a poet?
Yeah, good question. So I got started as a poet at a very young age. I grew up in a very, difficult situation. My mother is a single parent, all those kinds of things. And so in order for me to deal with what was happening, I started to write. So I got to college and I wanted to continue to be a part of the poetry community. I was in a program house on campus called the Women of Images, and it was a house to help women of color and Black women throughout their experience on campus because it is a predominantly white institution. Through that experience, I got to become an editor on the school magazine. I got to also become more involved with the poetry slam community through the universities. I just kind of stuck with it. It led to a book and so forth and so forth. And so, I'm just hoping to continue to grow as a poet. So, I want to ask you the same question. How did you become a visual artist?
I got involved. I did track and field. I was in theater. And so I kind of lost touch with that creative side. With the theater, it still kind of touches on that. And then after I had my second son, I decided not to go back to work full time. I decided to do part time. And my husband brought me all this arts and crafts stuff. And I'm like, okay, and so a hobby that I, once had now turned into a love and a passion.
Yeah.
So, and it kind of just grew from there, and my son will be 8 this year. So.
Oh, wow.
So It's one of those things that it just grew.
How has the pandemic impacted your mental health and wellness, or your approach to it?
So like, earlier, I definitely had to look at myself. Like, it's like I wasn't standing in the mirror, but it was like you were reflecting back at you, and you just had to, learn yourself all over again. And so I definitely had to look at my mental health and take that into consideration, because I never really thought about it. I always thought, I'm good.
Yeah.
I think sometimes as Black women, we do that a lot. We're good. And if we have a time where we're feeling like, we don't feel good, or we can't be, strong. We have that weakness. Like we feel like we're weak. We're not doing enough. When in reality, sometimes we just got to sit there and be in it.
Yeah.
And it's okay.
Yeah.
And I had to recognize that about myself. It's okay sometimes to not be okay. So it made me look at that more and definitely start talking to people about it more. Like, hey, well, you're not feeling good. Okay, maybe you want to talk to somebody. It's okay not to be okay. So.
Yeah. Because I know you said your work is therapeutic.
It definitely is. And when I stopped doing it, it affected me, because I know that I think that art is also a form of self-care.
But I definitely feel that for me, like I said, I started therapy. I felt like...
I think that's amazing.
Thank you. I feel like a lot of my poems before were just so personal. But that makes me want to ask you about how are you feeling about our theme this year. And it's so interesting that we have delayed time for the theme of Black health and wellness for art and soul. So like, what do you hope they take away from it?
Just that they can see themselves in a piece. That's all I ever want, is people to see themselves, and then have a conversation. Even if you don't like the piece, you had a conversation about it. Like, I mean, you're talking about it. I love that. You know, so
no,
it invokes some response.
Absolutely, because if art is not doing that, then what are we making it for?
And that's exactly
and I feel the same way about art, and so I feel like we have a lot of time to ask those questions or pose those questions. We can do a lot in between now and June to say, how is art connected to the culture? How is Black art connected to the fabric of Indianapolis?
Absolutely.
How is Black mental health and wellness important to the Black artist to be connected to the fabric of Indianapolis? Because I heard there's a historian, I forget his last name, but I know his first name is Sam, and everybody's really been talking about how popular he is with his walks, and he said that you can't talk about Indianapolis, the fabric of Indianapolis, without talking about the Black people and Black history. And that just speaks volumes, I think, to this. And I think we are I feel very lucky to be able to have absolutely. That as a theme with art, with Black history. Like you said, it's every day, right?
Yes, it's
so
every day.
how do we just move that forward and continue with the
and it's
message?
A conversation, and I love it. It makes people have that conversation about Black health and wellness, a conversation that should be had, you know. Like I said earlier, it hasn't been had enough. You know, we have to have those hard conversations. Is there anything else you'd like to finish with?
Yeah, I want to say, because this has really been on my mind, thinking about this interview, thinking about art and soul, is that I really truly believe that art and community will be the main things that pull us out of the pandemic. And especially art at its best is happening together. Like you said, it's a conversation. If I'm creating this piece, it's meant for you to ask yourself a question or have a conversation with it. And I just think that art, and like I said, community will be the main thing that will help us to figure out how to really navigate through the loss, the grief, the shifts and changes. It'll be able to encapsulate all the different facets of this pandemic as we work our way to figuring out how to survive it, as well as I think it will also speak and help the art and soul community and you know, other Black artists that are watching this and consistently inspired by this as a theme to say, hey, you know, here is how we're going to get through this. And our work is connected to each other, and it's connected to the city of Indianapolis.
And it creates a voice.
It creates a voice.
There's a voice.
Yeah, one that we all share.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So, but what about you? Do you have any final thoughts?
No, I think you set it off for me.